These countries are open to fully vaccinated travelers. With coronavirus vaccines becoming more widely available and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, recently clearing fully vaccinated people for travel, many of us are eager to start planning our first post-pandemic trips. Countries are once again welcoming international visitors, too, some with unique rules for vaccinated travelers, but there's still a lot to consider before deciding to travel to another part of the world. For one, vaccine distribution continues to be uneven, with poorer countries receiving and administering fewer COVID-19 vaccines than wealthier countries. And though fully vaccinated travelers are largely protected from the virus themselves, it's still not clear the extent to which they can spread the virus to others. Once an individual or group gets vaccinated, there's this great sense of relief that they're protected and wanting immediately to get back to normal, but we have to recognize that other people are still vulnerable, says Lisa Maragakis, Senior Director of Infection Prevention for the Johns Hopkins Health System. Even though you're protected by traveling, you could still be a vector for spreading the virus to others. We really have a global obligation to protect each other and work together. For those who decide to travel, health officials recommend waiting at least 2 weeks after becoming fully vaccinated and diligently following COVID-19 precautions like wearing masks, social distancing, hand washing, and avoiding crowds. Fully vaccinated people do not need to self-quarantine after returning to the US, unless it's required by state or local rules, but all travelers still need a negative COVID-19 test to board flights to the US. The CDC also recommends vaccinated travelers getting tested 3 to 5 days after international trips. With the health and safety of local communities in mind, for now, avoid traveling to countries with high infection rates, low vaccination rates, and overwhelmed medical infrastructure, all factors that can fluctuate rapidly. The CDC regularly updates its list of travel recommendations by destination, which categorizes countries by their local COVID-19 risk level: low, moderate, high, and very high. It's really important to think about the burden on the health system, says Maragakis. While countries may welcome the income from tourism, additional cases can tip over a fragile health system. Those considerations in mind, we've rounded up a few destinations that we're looking to for post-vaccination trips. Travel guidelines continue to change, so travelers should check the destination country's official government websites, and the CDC website, regularly before and during any trip. You may also want to consider purchasing travel insurance. In addition to rules about COVID-19 vaccination and testing, all of the below countries require travelers to follow local public health guidelines. Read on for the places to travel after your COVID vaccine. Countries that are open to vaccinated travelers. 1. Seychelles. Seychelles, the small Indian Ocean nation made up of more than 100 islands off the east coast of Africa, is now open to all travelers, vaccinated and unvaccinated alike. One exception: visitors from South Africa are still barred from entry due to the variant. Sylvester Radagonde, Seychelles tourism minister, says the country is reopening because it has successfully implemented an aggressive vaccination campaign among residents. The country has no quarantine requirements for visitors, but is requiring a negative COVID-19 test taken within 72 hours before arrival. Seychelles also requires visitors to have travel health insurance that would cover the cost of COVID-19 care and isolation if necessary. 2. Iceland. Fully vaccinated and previously infected travelers from all countries can once again visit Iceland. Travelers who can show proof of vaccination or previous infection are not required to provide a negative COVID-19 test result before boarding a flight or ship to Iceland, but they are required to take a test when they arrive in the country. Once that test result comes back negative, these visitors are free to travel around Iceland. Unvaccinated and not previously infected travelers must show proof of a negative COVID-19 test result from within 72 hours of departure to Iceland, take a test upon arrival, quarantine for 5 to 6 days, then take another test that produces a negative result before they can travel freely around the country. Visitors from certain high-risk countries must stay in specific government-run facilities for their 5 to 6 day quarantine after arriving. 3. Belize. Belize's borders are now wide open. Travelers to this Caribbean nation, located on the eastern coast of Central America, must bring their official COVID vaccine card showing that they've been fully vaccinated for at least 2 weeks, or show proof of a negative COVID-19 test taken within 96 hours of arrival, 48 hours for a rapid test. Visitors can also take a COVID-19 test after arriving at the airport for $50. 4. Georgia. Georgia is now open to fully vaccinated citizens of many countries, including the US, so long as they are arriving by air. The country is still barring entry via land or sea. Travelers must fly directly to Georgia from an approved country. Unvaccinated travelers must have a negative COVID-19 test taken within 72 hours of arrival, and are required to take a follow-up test on the third day in the country. Georgia requires a 12-day quarantine period for all visitors who have traveled through the UK within 2 weeks of arrival. 5. Ecuador. Fully vaccinated travelers can now visit Ecuador. The country is also open to unvaccinated travelers with a negative COVID-19 test taken up to 3 days before arrival, as well as travelers previously diagnosed with COVID-19, so long as a month has passed since they first developed symptoms. Travelers are not required to quarantine after arriving in Ecuador. To visit the Galapagos Islands, all international travelers must present a negative COVID-19 test taken within 96 hours before arrival. This can be the same test used to enter Ecuador, if it falls within the 96-hour window. If not, travelers must take a second test on mainland Ecuador, then wait for results before traveling onto the Galapagos Islands. 6. Guatemala. With a few exceptions, Guatemala is open to travelers who became fully vaccinated at least 2 weeks prior to arrival. The Central American country is also open to visitors with a negative COVID-19 test taken within 72 hours prior to arrival, as well as those who have recovered from the virus within the last 3 months. The US Embassy warns that anyone who has visited the UK or South Africa 2 weeks before arriving in Guatemala may be refused entry or may be required to quarantine. 7. Croatia. Croatia is now open to fully vaccinated travelers, as well as previously infected travelers and those who can show a negative COVID-19 test result from within 48 hours of arrival. Visitors are also permitted to enter Croatia if they take a COVID-19 test immediately upon arrival, then isolate until a negative result comes back. Travelers who cannot get a test upon arrival must self-isolate for 10 days. Travelers coming from an approved list of low-risk countries can enter Croatia without any requirements or restrictions, as long as they do not have symptoms and have not been in close contact with an infected person. All tourists must also show proof that they have paid for their accommodations in advance. 8. Montenegro. Fully vaccinated travelers from certain countries, including the US, are now welcome in Montenegro. In addition to travelers with proof that they've been fully vaccinated for at least 7 days, the country is also open to visitors with a negative COVID-19 test that's less than 72 hours old. The country's borders are open, without restriction, to travelers from low-risk countries.